In anime, there exists a trope of characters who seem to go through hell almost all of the time, and yet never die. These characters can be shot or stabbed or even killed, but somehow they always manage to come back. And sometimes that's for the better, and other times it's for the significantly worse. I genuinely don't believe there's a character that fits this role more than the character we're talking about today, because the character we're talking about today is Orochimaru. You see, Orochimaru has had Anko use the twin snake death technique on him. He's had Hiruzen use the Reaper death seal on him. He's been sealed by the Totsuka blade, and yet he still persists. And while a lot of people will attribute this to Orochimaru's just general cockroachiness and his ability to come back using his curse marks, what if I told you that the Orochimaru from the original Naruto has been dead for a long time? You probably wouldn't believe me, because Orochimaru in Boruto was just in a lab chilling, making copies of himself with Mitsuki and Log. But this theory makes a lot of sense to me, and it's gonna make a lot of sense to you here very shortly. But before we get into that, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And before we get to talking about my Orochimaru theory, guys, I have another theory. A theory that if you like this page, you're gonna love my other two YouTube pages. NC Gamer 23, where instead of talking anime, I play video games, and Hammer's Collection, where instead of talking anime, I unbox things from them. But before we get into all that, guys, today we have a brand new sponsor, Liquid IV. Listen, guys, as somebody who talks roughly 8 hours a day, hydration is very important to me. I'm one of those guys who has to walk around with a gallon water bottle just to keep myself hydrated. Fortunately, Liquid IV has made that significantly easier for me. You see, Liquid IV is all about hydration, but they understand that not everybody can drink 2 gallons of water a day like me, which is why their key product is a hydration multiplier. You see, these hydration multipliers are electrolyte drink mixes that make it so your hydration happens a lot faster than it would with just regular water. Quite literally, all you need to do is open up this packet, dump it into a glass or your own Liquid IV bottle, add somewhere around 16 ounces of water. I use a little bit less because I like mine to be strong, and drink. It's literally that easy. And not only does this multiply your hydration, it also tastes delicious. And coming in at only 45 calories per packet, I'd say it's quite worth the hydration. But I know what you're saying. You're saying,
Nick, I don't talk for 8 hours a day. Why would I need a hydration multiplier?
well, I use Liquid IV from everything from recovery after workouts to recovery after a long night out, if you know what I mean. And I'll tell you, drinking one of these before falling asleep at 2:30 a.m. full of pizza and your pants still on always helps me the next morning. But let's say you're sufficiently hydrated. You don't need any multiplication. That's not all Liquid IV sells. They also sell an energy multiplier. Using their proprietary energy blend, a singular stick of this increases your cognitive function and your physical energy. And the energy boost given through this is comparable to 1 to 2 8-ounce coffees. And let me tell you, the yuzu pineapple flavor, delicious. These have gotten me through more than a couple of YouTube videos. So what are you guys waiting for? Use code NCHammer at checkout for 15% off everything on Liquid IV's website. On top of that, you get free shipping. Either use the link in my description or my pinned comment to get access to Liquid IV, or make sure you use the code NCHammer at checkout. Let's stay hydrated. So I know, claiming that the one character who seems like he's never able to die is dead is kind of a stretch. And that's because within the confines of this theory, he's not technically dead. What do I mean by that? Well, in order to substantiate what I mean by that, I'm gonna have to give you a little background. Orochimaru's problems really began with Hiruzen. Orochimaru was unaware of the existence of the Reaper Death Seal. This is why he was surprised when he saw the Shinigami behind Hiruzen after the Shinigami had grabbed his soul. However, whether or not you understand the Reaper Death Seal or not, Orochimaru was smart enough to figure out that the literal god of death pulling his soul out of his body was a bad thing, and that he should fight against that. Also, of course, Hiruzen explained to him what the jutsu was while they stood there for 48 episodes holding each other. Fortunately for Orochimaru, Hiruzen didn't have enough chakra to pull the entirety of Orochimaru's soul out of his body and only got his arms. And because of this, Orochimaru could really no longer use his arms, and therefore couldn't cast jutsus. Because of this, Orochimaru had to make an emergency switch to a new body. And upon making this emergency switch to this new body, he was able to move his arms a little bit and use some simple jutsus. However, because this body was not a perfect match, he was only able to stay within that body for 3 years. And at the end of those 3 years, the body started to reject him and Orochimaru got very sick and weak. Sasuke capitalized on this moment and used it to assassinate Orochimaru. But not before Orochimaru tried to take over Sasuke's body, but had that reversed by Sasuke's Sharingan. So bing bang boom, Orochimaru's gone, right? He's dead, he's in the ground, see you later, GG's. Well, no. You see, because Orochimaru wasn't just putting curse marks on people to make sure that he would have more minions. While putting a curse mark on somebody does increase their power by allowing them to tap into the Senjutsu chakra of the surrounding area, it also has a back-end ability built into it. The more that a receiver of the curse mark uses said curse mark, the more they will pledge loyalty to the person who put it on them. And this is true for anybody who's ever put a curse mark on anybody. This isn't specific to Orochimaru. So when people like Sasuke or the Sound Village 4 use their curse mark all the way up to stage 2, their heart makes them more loyal to Orochimaru. To put it in simpler speech, the more you use a curse mark, the more likely you are to listen to commands from Orochimaru. But there's even more utility than this for Orochimaru in a curse mark. On top of the fact that it makes him a little army and it makes all the members of that little army even stronger, it also, with every curse mark, places a little bit of his chakra in DNA in somebody else. You see, because this chakra in DNA is what allows the curse mark to pull in that Senjutsu chakra. Because Orochimaru himself is technically a Snake Sage, even though he's too weak to undergo the transformation into full Snake Sage mode. But he was a genius at pulling in nature chakra and mixing it with his own to make Senjutsu chakra. So by placing his DNA and chakra in somebody, combined with the research he did with Jugo's clan, he was able to create the curse mark. So I guess the whole loyalty thing is kind of specific to Orochimaru. I'm more saying if somebody else were to learn how to place curse marks, then they would still have that loyalty thing built in. But since in every single curse mark there is a little bit of Orochimaru's chakra and DNA, he technically has respawn points in every single curse mark he places. That is to say, let's say Orochimaru is assassinated by Sasuke. He could then pop out of a curse mark he placed either on Sasuke or Anko or one of the Sound Village 4 if they were still alive later on as a revived version of himself. However, he can't just do this. It's not like respawning in an FPS. There's really two ways that Orochimaru can respawn using his curse marks. The first is that the seal of the curse mark can be broken completely. That is to say that somebody either uses their curse mark so much that the curse mark takes over their entire body and therefore Orochimaru takes over their entire body, or the seal on the curse mark is purposely broken. You know how Kakashi was able to seal Sasuke's curse mark so it wouldn't take over more of his body? Kind of the reverse of that. And we've actually seen practical examples of both of these examples. Unfortunately for us, they're two incredibly important plot points in the theory we're talking about today. You see, the first time that we saw Orochimaru released from a curse mark was in Itachi and Sasuke's fight. Essentially, the entire reason that Itachi wanted to fight Sasuke was in order to drain him of all of his chakra. That's right. Itachi was only fighting Sasuke to drain him of his chakra. He was never trying to kill him. And yet Sasuke was trying to kill Itachi and still lost. But why was Itachi trying to drain Sasuke of all of his chakra? Well, Itachi knew that if Sasuke was depleted of all of his chakra, then he would tap into the curse mark. And since Sasuke would be in an incredibly weakened state, since he had just been fighting Itachi and he was out of chakra, Orochimaru would be able to take over Sasuke's body. And this is essentially exactly what happens. Sasuke tries Kirin on Itachi and Itachi only stops it with a Susanoo. Itachi then tells Sasuke if he has any more trump cards, he better pull them out because the real battle's starting now. And it's at that point that Sasuke hears Orochimaru and says, "Let me take control. I can give you the power you want." You know, the reason Sasuke took the curse mark in the first place, because he wanted the strength to kill Itachi. And just like that, Orochimaru shoots out of Sasuke's curse mark, his body a multi-headed snake, and Orochimaru and Itachi fight for a second time. However, once again, Orochimaru is defeated, but this time in a different way. You see, this time, Itachi uses his sword of Totsuka. Essentially, Itachi sees Orochimaru slithering out of the snake's mouth, acting as its tongue, kind of. He pierces Orochimaru through the body with the sword of Totsuka. Now, the sword of Totsuka, even if it just scratches you, seals you into a realm called the Realm of Drunken Dreams. Essentially, inside of the gourd that Itachi Susanoo also carries is this extra-dimensional realm. In this realm operates just like the Shinigami stomach or the Amber clarifying pot. It is an extra-dimensional space outside of the confines of Earth's reality. And within this universe, the people sealed within experience constant dizziness and nausea as they spin around in an endless black void. Orochimaru was able to be reincarnated through the medium of Sasuke because his soul still existed on Earth, at least the Orochimaru we know. You see, within every single curse mark, Orochimaru leaves a little bit of himself. And therefore, when he died the first time at the hands of Sasuke, he technically never left Earth. That is to say that he never ascended to the Pure Lands. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to be reincarnated through the medium of Sasuke because his soul would have then had to been pulled from the Pure Lands and put into that body that extended out of Sasuke. And the only things that we know that can tap into the Pure Lands is Edo Tensei. But now, Orochimaru's soul had been sealed with the sword of Totsuka. And the thing is, this was always Itachi's plan, was to seal him using that sword. And I theorize this is why we never saw Orochimaru revive himself ever again. You see, because the next way we see Orochimaru revived is with other people helping him. Essentially, once the war arc kicks off, Sasuke realizes that they need somebody on their side who knows Edo Tensei very well, and that is Orochimaru. So Sasuke essentially kidnaps Anko, because Anko is the last person with a curse mark that he can utilize, considering that Kimaru and the Sound Village 4 are all dead, and for some reason Suigetsu and Karin don't have curse marks. And Jugo doesn't have a curse mark because he's basically just one large walking curse mark. Regardless, Anko gets kidnapped, which if we're talking about OG Naruto Anko, I want her to kidnap me. And Sasuke uses a chunk of Kabuto's flesh to reanimate Orochimaru out of Anko. Well, he puts a part of Kabuto's flesh on the curse mark, and then he releases the curse mark like we talked about earlier. But this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Yes, we understand that Orochimaru left parts of his DNA and his chakra within Anko, so it stands to reason he should be able to be reincarnated through these means, right? Except for the fact when you consider that his soul should technically be sealed. The Sword of Totsuka specifically states that once you are sealed with it, your soul is sealed forever. And since we know that souls are real physical things within the Naruto universe that are incredibly important to you living, how is he alive? I mean, if you can quite literally cut the arms off of a soul and it stops you from being able to use your arms or even use jutsu, if your entire soul is sealed away from the plane of existence that you live on, how can you live? Now, there's a couple of ways we could look at this as a viewer. We could say, well, upon Itachi's death, everybody in the Sword of Totsuka is released, which is a possibility if you don't consider how any other soul-taking technique works within the confines of Naruto. Obviously, with the Reaper Death Seal, if the user dies, that soul stays in the Shinigami's stomach. That's the entire point of Reaper Death Seal. But a closer facsimile to the Sword of Totsuka would be the Amber Clarifying Pot, one of the treasured tools of the Sage's Six Paths. That essentially says that if the user of this pot says your name, and if you respond to that call, you get sealed inside this pot forever. But here's the thing, if the user who sealed you inside that pot dies, you still stay in that pot. Essentially, you stay in that pot or that extra dimensional space until somebody releases you from it. And I think we can all agree that Itachi didn't release Orochimaru from the Sword of Totsuka. On top of that, Itachi knew he was gonna die in this fight against Sasuke. Nobody knew how advanced his disease was more than him. And in fact, his entire idea was to die during this battle so Sasuke could take his eyes. That's why he programmed his eyes to activate Amaterasu whenever they saw Obito. So if Itachi knows that anybody sealed within the Sword of Totsuka is gonna get released the second he dies, why even use it against Orochimaru? I mean, yes, it would suck him out of Sasuke for the moment, but it's really a temporary stopgap. He's gonna be out of it in like 30 seconds. Or you could look at this like the way that I'm looking at it, that Orochimaru still exists within the world of drunken dreams. But hold on, guys, before we get going any further, I want to show you guys what's happening over at Hammer's Collection. So guys, I have some incredible news that pertains to Hammer's Collection and its future. Hammer's Collection has a brand new sponsor. Somebody who's never sent us a statue before has now hopped on the train. And those people would be Favor GK. Now, I'm sure if you guys have shopped anime collectibles at all, you know who Favor GK is, but if you guys don't know who Favor GK is, let me tell you. Favor GK is a one-stop shop when it comes to anime collectibles. We're talking figurines, statues, posters, anything you could want from anime. And I was blessed enough to be selected as one of their sponsors. But you guys know me, I'm the kind of person who likes to go big or go home. So I had them send me one of their biggest statues out there. That's right. This is what we're unboxing today. Whether or not you guys want to go big or go small with Favor GK, guys, you gotta make sure you follow their TikToks and their Instagram to stay up to date with what they have in stock. Or you could just browse their website, favorgk.com. But with no further ado, let's get into unboxing what could be our biggest statue ever. The second he was sealed by the Sword of Totsuka, that Orochimaru was gone forever. And there's actually a lot of evidence to substantiate this. One, let's think about cloning within the confines of Naruto. It very much exists. Kashin Koji, Log, Mitsuki. And all you truly need in order to pull off a clone within the Naruto universe appears to be somebody's DNA and their chakra. We know that clones have the exact same chakra signature as the original because Kashin Koji is able to pass in and out of Konoha without being sensed by Ino's gate. That is because Jiraiya's chakra has already been registered with Konoha. And then obviously, you need somebody's DNA if you want the body to look like them. But within every single curse mark lies Orochimaru's DNA and chakra. So by Sasuke releasing the curse seal, they were able to access both this chakra and this DNA. And once that chakra and DNA met Hashirama's cells, which were the ones that were ripped off of Kabuto, it was able to create a clone. Now, I know what you're saying,
Well, if this is a clone of Orochimaru, how does it have the memories of Orochimaru?
and that is a great question. For that, we have to consider the circumstance of this cloning. Mind you, this DNA and chakra is being ripped out of Anko, somebody who has a very storied and long relationship with Orochimaru, and essentially being created by Sasuke. Both of these people have a high likelihood of being able to influence the memories and foundational structure of this newly founded clone. But even if Anko and Sasuke weren't able to impart memories into this newly created clone of Orochimaru, we've also seen with Kashin Koji that simply being the clone of somebody allows you a vague tap in to the memories of their lives, as we often see Kashin Koji get glimpses of Jiraiya's life. So with a combination of that fact and also the fact that Anko and Sasuke were the ones who basically created this clone, it's not crazy to assume that Orochimaru would be able to tap into his past life's memories, especially when you consider the fact that memories are a very physical thing in Naruto, with clans like the Yamanaka being able to view other people's. But what's truly the most compelling point of this entire theory is how this new Orochimaru acts. Mind you, when Orochimaru died at the hands of Sasuke, he was evil. He had tried to destroy Konoha, he had killed Hiruzen, he was planning on taking over Sasuke's body. He kept groups of children in cages in case he ever needed a backup body. And when he did need a backup body, he had all those children murder each other to see which one would be the strongest one for him to take over. He killed 80 children trying to recreate wood release, and he killed Rasa just kind of for looking at him wrong. This man was the pure embodiment of evil. However, when he's revived by Sasuke, he's different. And not even just slightly different, incredibly different. In fact, the first thing that he does when he's revived by Sasuke is revive the 4 Hokage, one of which he killed. And this was all in order to help a village which he had just previously tried to destroy like several times. In fact, he went so far to revive the 4 Hokage that he quite literally gutted himself with a sword of Kusanagi to do it. This brand new body he had just been put into, he cut wide open with a sword of Kusanagi after donning a Shinigami mask that summons a Shinigami and has the Shinigami copy your movements. Obviously, he did this so the Shinigami would cut its stomach open and then release all the souls inside of it. Some of those souls being his arms, but also some of those souls being Hiruzen, Minato, and half of Kurama. And with those souls released, he now had access to his arms and was able to do Edo Tensei to bring the 4 Hokage back. But here's the thing. His Edo Tensei was so complete, it brought back all of the Kages at close to peak power, and also he had control over 3 of them. Yes, when Orochimaru Edo Tensei the 4 Hokage back, he could control every single one of them except for Hashirama without a talisman. But he never put a talisman in Hashirama, but he could have. And the old Hashirama quite literally already had put a talisman in Hashirama in order to make sure that he could control Hashirama. Orochimaru just summoned 4 of the strongest people in the universe and had control over them. And mind you, Edo Tensei, after it's performed, doesn't take additional chakra. So the only thing that was gonna stop him was him releasing Edo Tensei. And who's gonna stop the 4 Hokage, which he could control? However, instead of doing something evil, like after the war arc ends destroying Konoha, Orochimaru releases them. And in fact, Orochimaru goes a step further than just reviving the 4 Hokage. Orochimaru places a curse mark on Guru, paralyzing him for a moment so Karin can destroy the statue. He even goes so far as to use his shadow striking snakes to stop a large portion of the Ten Tails from killing members of the Shinobi Alliance. For all intents and purposes, throughout the entire duration of the war arc, Orochimaru was incredibly useful. And as the war arc came to a close, he didn't try to mount some final attack. That was Sasuke, which leads me to believe that this Orochimaru couldn't possibly be the same Orochimaru we got in the OG days of Naruto. Yes, obviously he's been given an immortal body in the form of the White Zetsu, so you could say that his motivations have now changed. But for his motivations to shift so greatly from I'm gonna destroy Konoha to now I'm gonna save it is a bit much of a stretch for Orochimaru. Yes, obviously Orochimaru has a humble beginning. He was raised by Hiruzen, and his quest for immortality started when he saw Tsunade's little brother die during the Second Great Shinobi World War, so he wanted to find every jutsu so nobody else around him would die, but he perverted his dream down the line. And the dichotomy between who he is in OG Naruto to who he is now in Boruto is too glaring to not observe. We know cloning is a capability, and we know that clones can differ from the original. Mitsuki is a clone of Orochimaru, but he was raised in a different situation from Orochimaru, and therefore he is substantially different from Orochimaru. You could say the same thing about Log or Kashin Koji. It's a classic conversation of nature versus nurture. Yes, the genetic sequences and chakra signatures are the same in a clone, but the nurture aspect, the part where they're raised, is different from the original, and therefore they'll have different personalities, different beliefs, different motivations. So this Orochimaru, brought into the world in a time of great distress, used the knowledge and information that he had to help those who brought him into the world. And because one of the first things he did was help those who brought him into the world, and therefore the Shinobi Alliance, he had loyalty to his previous village, Konoha, which is why he was able to be brought back into the fold by Naruto after the 4th Great Shinobi World War. I mean, think about it. Do you think Konoha Crush Orochimaru would work in a lab under the supervision of one of the super soldiers he made? I mean, the irony of Orochimaru's situation right now is quite literally endless. The one child who survived and accepted the wood release, Yamato, is now his supervisor. Orochimaru's clone slash child now attends Konoha schools. And doesn't it seem strange to you that Orochimaru now is interested in cloning? What were his motivations for trying to figure out Mitsuki in Log? Was it because he was trying to figure out Snake Sage mode and his body was too weak? Possibly. Or was he trying to more intricately understand the phenomenon that happened to him during the war arc? Every other soul-swallowing item in the entirety of Naruto has no out clause. So why would the Sword of Totsuka? And we have learned through the combination of Edo Tensei and Reaper Death Seal that once your soul is sealed, it can't be brought back out. Unless, of course, your soul is released through something like cutting a Shinigami's stomach open. But Itachi never releases his gourd that holds the realm of drunken dreams. So I fully believe that Orochimaru still exists in that gourd, living in an endless black void of nausea and dizziness. While his clone, who was influenced by Sasuke's changing feelings for Konoha and Anko's long-standing feelings for Konoha, is living in replacement of the original Orochimaru, trying to figure out cloning techniques. But what do I know? I just thought of this idea while filming a video about all of the mythical weapons within Naruto. So I could be way off base. But if you guys see some sensibilities in this theory, tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Listen, I'm not saying that I made this theory up because I want Orochimaru to be permanently dizzy and nauseous, but that would be nice.